Welcome to the Deep Dive from BookCast FM.
Bringing books to life, one cast at a time.
Today, we're getting into something really fundamental, something that affects all of us. How we live as we get older. Not just, how long we're around, but how well we live those years.
Mm-hmm.
We're pulling key ideas from Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Dr. Peter Attia with Bill Gifford.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to unpack the core message from Attia. It's basically a guide to understanding the science of extending what he calls Healthspan.
Right, Healthspan.
Which is that time we're living not just long, but living well. And it's very different from just adding years, from just focusing on lifespan itself.
It sounds like it's about tackling those chronic diseases that, are the main issues today, shifting how we approach things.
Exactly, from reacting after things go wrong to being proactive before they do.
And the book points out pretty early on that our current healthcare system has a bit of a blind spot here, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. Attia argues that medicine 2.0, that's his term for the current system, it's actually amazing for acute stuff.
Like trauma, infections.
Right. Things that cause what he calls fast death. If you have a terrible accident, you absolutely want medicine 2.0. It's brilliant at saving lives in a crisis.
The ER, basically.
That's where it shines. But, and this is the crucial point, it's not really set up well for the chronic diseases of aging, the things that lead to a slow death. Those diseases that kind of creep up on you over decades.
Okay, so let's really break down that key difference. Health span versus lifespan. It seems like more than just words.
Oh, it's a total mindset shift. Lifespan, that's just the number, how many years you clock in. Health span is the quality within those years.
Yeah.
Attia's whole focus is on adding life to your years, not just tacking on more years at the end where you might not be functional.
Adding life to the years, I like that. It's about keeping your function, your vitality. Yeah. Being independent later on.
Exactly. Not just existing at 85, but being able to, do things, play with grandkids, carry groceries, travel.
Things we take for granted now.
For sure. And this isn't accidental. He calls it the long game. Longevity isn't something you achieve with, one magic bullet.
No quick fixes.
Right. It's a strategy. It's about consistent, intentional choices made over decades to build resilience and reduce your risk starting early.
And he has this concept, the marginal decade. What's that about?
Yeah, that's powerful. It's the last 10 years of your life. He asks you to really think. What do you want to be able to do then?
Physically, mentally.
All of it. Can you hike? Get up off the floor easily, lift your own bag, simple stuff, right?
But stuff that becomes a huge barrier for so many.
Exactly. And that connects to his backcasting idea. You define those marginal decade goals, then you work backward.
There.
What do you need to be able to do at 80 to achieve that? At 70, 60? And what kind of training, what kind of habits do you need to start now to make sure you have those capabilities later?
So it's like training for a marathon your whole life, not just trying to avoid collapsing at the finish line.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And that proactive training mindset, that's the core of moving from medicine 2.0 to what he calls medicine 3.0.
Right, so 2.0 is reactive, great for the crisis, the fast death.
Exactly. Brilliant when things break suddenly. But it struggles with those slow death diseases. Heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, metabolic problems. Medicine 2.0 usually waits for symptoms.
And by then?
Often, a lot of damage has already happened. Sometimes irreversible damage. Medicine 3.0 flips that. It's proactive, it's personalized, it's all about prevention.
Identifying risks way earlier.
Decades earlier,
right.
Before you feel anything. It's about managing those risks long before they become a disease.
So instead of just fixing the car after the crash.
You're engineering a much more resilient car from the start, one that's less likely to break down.
Or like preventing rust, maybe? That silent damage?
That's another analogy he uses, yeah. Medicine 2.0 fixes the crash damage. Medicine 3.0 prevents the rust, that quiet, cumulative decay that happens over time.
And that rust, that sounds like this silent phase of chronic disease he talks about.
It really is. Most deaths now are from these chronic diseases, and they take decades to develop. The crucial thing is this long, silent phase where damage is building up, but you feel fine.
High blood pressure, plaque in arteries.
Insulin resistance, all progressing quietly for years, often. Waiting for chest pain or, serious memory issues, it's often way too late for real prevention.
It's like there's a clock ticking inside us we don't even hear.
That's exactly the idea. Biological age versus chronological age. Your birthday tells you chronological age, but Attia argues you can absolutely influence how quickly your biological systems age. Disease, in this view, is basically risk accumulation. It compounds like interest, but negatively. So starting early to manage those risks has a huge disproportionate impact down the line.
What sort of things speed up that biological clock the most?
Well, the big ones are things like insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, being sedentary, poor sleep, chronic stress. These are major accelerators. They just pile on that silent damage.
Okay, so Medicine 3.0 means getting ahead of that clock, tackling that silent risk, and the main targets are these 4 horsemen, as he calls them.
Right. A stark term, but it gets the point across. These are the 4 big categories of disease causing most death and disability today.
Which are?
Heart disease, specifically atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or ASCVD, then cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, with Alzheimer's being the most prominent, and finally, type 2 diabetes and related metabolic dysfunction.
Got it. 4 big ones.
And the idea is if you can really mitigate your risk for these 4, your odds of a long, healthy life go way, way up.
Let's take heart disease first, the biggest killer, right?
Still number 1. And Attia really emphasizes it's a disease of cumulative damage over time. The main issue is atherosclerosis, that plaque building up in arteries.
We hear about cholesterol.
Right, but the key point he makes is it's not just about your cholesterol level today, it's the duration of exposure to the damaging types of cholesterol particles specifically, these ApoB-containing particles. That exposure over decades is what drives the damage.
So, like, low-grade damage for a long time can be really bad.
Exactly, maybe even worse than a short spike. And because it's silent for so long, he's a huge advocate for advanced testing, looking beyond just the standard lipid panel.
What kind of tests?
Things like measuring your ApoB level directly that tells you the actual number of those potentially damaging particles. And using imaging, like a CAC scan, a calcium artery score.
To actually see plaque.
Yeah, or a CIMT ultrasound, to literally see if plaque is starting to form years before you'd ever have a heart attack or stroke. It's about catching that rust really early.
Makes sense.
His quote on this is blunt: heart disease doesn't kill the weak, it kills the unaware.
Okay, next horseman. Cancer, the runaway cell. This feels different somehow? More complex.
It is incredibly complex. It's not just one disease, right? It's hundreds. Basically, cells that ignore normal controls and just multiply. And they're masters of disguise, mutation, evasion.
Cheeky.
Very. And like heart disease, it often starts silently, decades before we can detect a tumor. Screenings like mammograms, colonoscopies, they're absolutely vital, but they tend to catch cancer later in its development compared to how early we could potentially detect cardiovascular risk.
So is it harder to apply that proactive medicine 3.0 approach to cancer?
In some ways, yeah, because it's so diverse. But understanding how it works, how it starts, how it avoids the immune system, that's the first step. Knowing your own risks, family history, genetics, minimizing known drivers like smoking, obesity, using the screenings we do have. Those are still key proactive moves.
Right.
As Attia puts it, cancer doesn't play fair, but understanding its behavior is our first step in controlling it.
Third horseman, neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, the long goodbye. This is the one that I think scares people the most.
Yeah, understandably. It's like a slow motion disappearance, isn't it? It attacks the self, your identity. And the scary part is the underlying pathology, like those beta amyloid plaques in Alzheimer's. That process can start 20, even 30 years before you see the first hint of memory problem.
Yeah. 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. So by the time symptoms show up, significant brain damage is already there.
Which means prevention has to start way, way earlier than we think.
Absolutely. Decades earlier. And while genetics, like having the APOE4 gene variant, play a big role.
So that increases risk, right?
Significantly. But there are many modifiable risk factors, too, things we've already mentioned. Insulin resistance, high blood pressure, and crucially, poor sleep or sleep disorders like sleep apnea.
Sleep again.
It's huge for brain health.
Yep.
So protecting your future cognitive function means working on your metabolic health, your blood pressure, and making quality sleep a non-negotiable, starting long before you'd ever worry about memory. Attia's quote here is chilling. If heart disease kills the body, Alzheimer's kills the self.
Heavy stuff. Okay, the final horseman. Type 2 diabetes and metabolic dysfunction. The overflow phenomenon. You mentioned this seems linked to the others.
Hugely linked. Attia argues it's maybe the most foundational driver of chronic disease today. Metabolic dysfunction, especially stemming from insulin resistance. It's not just one of the horsemen. It actively fuels the others.
How so?
Well, it's a major driver of heart disease risk. It's strongly linked to neurodegeneration. Alzheimer's is sometimes even called type 3 diabetes because of the connection to insulin resistance in the brain, and it can fuel cancer growth too.
Okay, explain this overflow phenomenon idea.
Right. Think of your cells, especially muscle and fat cells, as storage bins for energy, glucose, and fat. If you consistently take in more energy than you use, particularly from, say, lots of refined carbs and unhealthy fats, and you're not active enough...
The bins get full.
Exactly. They get full and start to overflow. The body struggles to put energy away efficiently. Glucose and fats stay elevated in the bloodstream. That's insulin resistance. Your cells stop responding properly to insulin, the hormone that's trying to manage all this energy traffic.
And this happens long before you actually get diagnosed with diabetes.
Often decades before. By the time your fasting blood sugar hits the official diabetes number, you've probably been significantly insulin resistant for a very long time.
So standard blood sugar tests might miss it early on.
They often do. Attia pushes for looking at things like fasting insulin levels, the ratio of triglycerides to HDL cholesterol, measuring visceral fat, that dangerous fat around your organs, and watching the trends in your A1C, even if it's technically in the normal range. It's about spotting that energy overload early.
Got it.
He says, type 2 diabetes is not a glucose problem. It's a metabolic energy overload problem, and it starts long before your blood sugar spikes. And tackling visceral fat is priority one.
Okay, so we've mapped out the problems, the mindset shift needed. Now the solutions. Attia's 5 Horsemen strategy. The toolkit for medicine 3.0.
Exactly. He boils it down to 5 key areas, 5 levers we can pull to boost health span and fight off those 4 horsemen.
What are they?
Exercise, nutrition, sleep, emotional health, and then use strategically medications and supplements.
Let's start with exercise.
Yeah.
He calls it the most powerful longevity drug. That's quite a claim.
It is, but he argues the data backs it up completely. There's simply no drug, no single intervention that comes close to the broad positive impact exercise has on reducing risk for all 4 horsemen.
All 4, wow.
Yeah. Improves metabolic health, heart function, brain health, keeps muscle and bone strong, improves balance. The list just goes on and on. It's incredible.
And he mentioned specific metrics like vital signs.
He does. Your VO2 max, basically your peak aerobic capacity, is one of the strongest predictors of how long you'll live. Stronger than many traditional risk factors like cholesterol or blood pressure, actually. Yeah. And muscle mass and strength are also critical. Things like your grip strength or how easily you can get up and down from the floor without using your hands. These are powerful markers of your functional capacity and resilience as you age.
So what kind of exercise does he recommend? Just move more?
It's more structured than that. He talks about 4 pillars of training you need to incorporate.
Okay.
Stability, that's foundational movement quality. Balance, preventing injury. Strength training, absolutely crucial for muscle, bone, metabolism. Zone 2 aerobic training, that's moderate intensity cardio where you can hold a conversation. You need several hours of that per week, ideally, to build your aerobic base.
And the 4th?
VO2 max training, that's high intensity interval work, really pushing your limits maybe once or twice a week to raise that cardiovascular ceiling. You need a mix of all 4 for a truly comprehensive program.
So it's not just one thing, it's strategic.
Absolutely, like everything in medicine 3.0. And the payoff is huge. His quote sums it up. If exercise were a drug, we'd call it a miracle.
Okay, next pillar, nutrition. This area is always so confusing, right? So much conflicting advice.
Oh, totally. It's a minefield. And Attia's approach here is, I think, really refreshing because it's very pragmatic. It's not dogmatic at all.
How so?
He basically says, look, there is no perfect diet, full stop. There's only the diet that works for you right now, given your specific metabolism, your goals, your current health status.
So it has to be personalized.
Yeah.
And it might change over time.
Exactly. He talks about 5 levers you can adjust, what you eat, the macros, micros, when you eat meal timing, fasting, how much you eat calories, how you cycle your approach, maybe periods of restriction followed by periods of maintenance. And the 5th, absolutely critical lever, how your body responds.
Tracking your response.
Yes.
Yeah.
Objectively. Minimizing ultra-processed food is pretty much universal advice. Beyond that, it's about using tools like continuous glucose monitors, CGMs, to see how different foods affect your blood sugar in real time, or tracking blood work trends.
So data drives the decisions.
Precisely. Fasting is presented as a powerful tool you can use, but not some rigid rule everyone must follow. The guiding question isn't, what's the best diet? It's, what problem am I trying to solve right now with my nutrition?
That makes a lot more sense. Okay, sleep. The best medicine. You mentioned it before, but it often gets sacrificed, doesn't it?
Tragically, yes. People cut sleep first when they get busy, and Attia argues that's just fundamentally counterproductive. He calls sleep the foundation. Everything else rests on it.
Why is it so critical?
Well, it's essential for brain health, for one. That's when your brain does its clearing out waste products like beta amyloid linked to Alzheimer's. It's vital for metabolic health, regulates insulin, cortisol, hunger hormones. It's critical for emotional regulation, for learning, memory consolidation.
Okay, it's important. How much do we need?
Most adults need 7 to 9 hours of quality, uninterrupted sleep per night. And quality really matters.
Right, not just time in bed.
Exactly. So things like having a cool, dark, quiet room help. Consistency with bedtimes and wake times is big for your internal clock. And crucially, identifying and treating sleep disorders. Sleep apnea especially is way more common and dangerous than people think, and it hammers your cardiovascular and cognitive health.
So don't ignore snoring.
Definitely get it checked out. His line is powerful. Sleep is the tide that lifts or sinks all other ships.
Okay, next pillar, emotional health. The unspoken pillar. Attia gets personal here, right?
He does. He's very open about his own journey, how he was obsessed with physical metrics for years, but completely neglected his mental and emotional well-being and the toll that took.
And this isn't just about feeling good. It affects physical health.
Absolutely. Chronic stress, unresolved trauma, negative thought patterns, living in fear. These aren't just in your head. They have direct physical effects. They mess with cortisol, insulin sensitivity, inflammation. And they make it really hard to consistently do the other things like exercise and eat well.
So mental fitness is just as important as physical fitness for longevity.
Completely non-negotiable, in his view. What's the point of optimizing your body to live to 100 if you're miserable, anxious, or isolated the whole time? That's not really outliving, is it?
Good point.
So things like therapy, mindfulness practices, building strong social connections, working through past issues, these aren't luxuries. They're fundamental to a long, well-lived life. His question cuts deep. What's the point of living to 100 if you're miserable the whole way?
Yeah. Okay, finally, medications and supplements. Where do they fit in this picture?
They're seen as valuable tools, definitely, but they are secondary to the lifestyle foundations. They support, they don't replace.
Okay.
The idea is to use them strategically, based on your specific risks, your data, to fine-tune things where lifestyle alone isn't quite enough, or to address a specific diagnosed issue. They're not shortcuts around doing the work on exercise, nutrition, sleep, and emotional health.
Right. So we have this big toolkit, this proactive medicine 3.0 mindset. What's our role, the listener's role in all this?
This is key. Attia makes it clear. Because Medicine 2.0 isn't really set up for this deep, personalized, proactive approach. You have to take charge. You need to become the CEO of your own health.
Take ownership. Step up.
Exactly. That means educating yourself, like listening to this deep dive. It means understanding your personal risks. And it means actively seeking out data that goes beyond the standard checkup.
Like those advanced tests we mentioned.
Yeah, ApoB, maybe a CAC scan, DXA scans for body composition and bone density, maybe using a CGM for a while. Not just getting one snapshot, but tracking the trends in your numbers over time. That's where the real insights are.
And using that information to build your own plan.
Precisely. You design your personal strategy based on your data, your risks, guided by that vision you have for your marginal decade. It's about making informed choices and then acting consistently.
It sounds like a lot of work. Where does someone even start?
Yeah.
It can feel overwhelming.
It can seem that way, but he offers a really clear starting point in the book. First step, define those marginal decade goals. Get specific. What do you really want to be able to do?
Okay, visualize it.
Second, gather your baseline data. Get the important tests done so you know where you stand right now. Third, and this is important, pick one area to focus on initially.
Just one, not all 5 pillars at once.
No, definitely not. That's a recipe for burnout. Pick one, maybe it's exercise, maybe sleep, maybe nutrition, maybe emotional health, and commit to working on that consistently for, say, the next 90 days.
Build momentum in one area first.
Exactly. Build that habit, gain some confidence, see some results. Then, once that feels solid, you can layer in the next thing. Track your progress, see what the data tells you, adjust as needed. It's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing, iterative process, a journey.
It really drives home that living well for a long time isn't passive. It's an active project we have to manage.
It absolutely is, and the core message is one of empowerment, really. Yes, the best time to start might have been years ago, but the next best time is literally right now. As Attia says, the best time to start this journey was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Wow. This has been a really, really insightful look into Outlive. It genuinely shifts your perspective, doesn't it? Moving from just hoping you don't get sick to actively, strategically pursuing vitality for the long haul.
Yeah, understanding that these major diseases often develop silently for decades and knowing the limitations of our current reactive system, it really highlights why we need to take personal control, why these proactive steps are so critical.
It gives you a framework and actual tools.
Right. Tools to potentially live longer, sure, but more importantly, to really improve the quality and the capability you have during those extra years.
It leaves you thinking, for sure. Maybe the question to ponder is, what part of my desired marginal decade feels most important to start training for, like today?
That's a perfect question to sit with, a great takeaway.
We've been diving into key ideas from Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Peter Attia, MD, with Bill Gifford. If this conversation sparked your interest and you want the deep dive on the science, the detailed strategies, the personal stories, we definitely recommend checking out the book itself.
Yeah, it's dense, but incredibly valuable. And supporting the author by buying the book is the best way to help them continue sharing this kind of important work. You'll find a link to purchase Outlive right there in the description.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some new perspectives, maybe some practical steps for your own long game.
Absolutely. Until next time.
From BookCast FM.
Bringing books to life, one cast at a time.